The building went silent, except for a child's cries drifting up the elevator shaft. Smoke licked the seams. The car hung crooked between floors. Engineers argued. Protocol stalled. Only one man moved. Dusty coveralls, split knuckles, a wrench between his teeth. Liam Carter. The janitor clipped an old harness and stepped into blackness, climbing hand over hand above. The CEO's daughter rasped, "Mom below!" A corroded brake moaned. When the cable jumped, everyone screamed except him. He shifted weight, jammed steel into gears, and chose to. Fall last. Who deserve your trust? The title on a business card, or the person willing to fall last to save a child? Chicago's Sterling Innovations tower punched 50 stories into the skyline, all glass and ambition. The lobby stretched wide as a cathedral, marble veins catching morning light. Beneath it, for levels of underground parking. Above, 18 high-speed elevators hummed in their shafts, each branded Sterling Lift, each supposedly state-of-the-art. The building breathed hierarchy. Executives strode through the main entrance. Tech staff used the side doors, and maintenance workers like Liam Carter entered through the loading bay unseen. Liam was 36, broad-shouldered with hands that knew every bolt and beam in the building. He wore coveralls that had seen better years, a canvas tool. Belt slung low on his hip. His knuckles were scarred from 1,000 small battles with stubborn machinery. Most people looked through him. He preferred it that way, but Liam Carter hadn't always been a janitor. Once he'd worn a different uniform, aerospace engineer, specializing in suspension systems and emergency protocols. He'd overseen safety mechanisms on aircraft carriers where a single miscalculation meant lives lost. Then came the incident, a hydraulic failure during a training exercise. His team trapped. He stayed to lock the backup brake manually, shouting for them to climb first. 3 made it. 1 didn't. The official report called it equipment malfunction. Liam called it unfinished business with gravity. He left the field, left the title, kept the guilt. Now he scrubbed floors and fixed what broke. The work was simple. The stakes felt smaller until they weren't. Callista Sterling was 34. Platinum blonde hair pulled into a flawless twist. A red V-neck dress that commanded every room she entered. She'd built Sterling Innovations from venture capital and sleepless nights, transforming it into a tech powerhouse. The media called her brilliant. Her competitors called her ruthless. The truth lived somewhere in between. She was a single mother, navigating boardrooms and bedtime stories, splitting herself in half daily. Her daughter Sophie was 7, bright-eyed and curious, the one soft spot in an otherwise armor-plated life. Then there was Clinton Reeves, director of facilities, 48 and territorial. He wore anxiety like cologne. Always. Worried someone might notice he didn't actually fix things. He just scheduled them. Ingrid Park, chief safety engineer, 32 and sharp, knew the systems better than anyone. She'd flagged concerns before. Clinton had buried them. Henry Moore, head of security, played politics over principles. Finn Barrett, the actual elevator technician, 30 years old and competent, spent most days fighting red tape instead of mechanical problems. They all worked in the same building. They just lived in different worlds. Morning in Sterling Tower felt like choreographed chaos. Liam arrived at 6 o'clock, echoing in the empty lobby. He pushed his cleaning cart past the row of elevators, E&E through 18, their stainless steel doors reflecting his tired face. In the corner, someone had spilled coffee across the marble. He knelt, wiping slow circles with a rag that smelled of industrial lemon. "Mr. Liam." A small voice rang out. Sophie Sterling bounded toward him, backpack bouncing, clutching a cookie wrapped in napkin. Her mother trailed behind, heels clicking precise rhythms. "Sophie, we've talked about this," Callista said, her tone polite ice. "Mr. Carter is working." Liam glanced up, managed a half smile. "It's all right, ma'am." Sophie pressed the cookie into his hand. "You fixed the water fountain yesterday." "I saw. Just tightened a valve," he said quietly. Callista's eyes swept over him a glance that lasted half a second, but measured everything. "Come along, Sophie. We'll be late." The girl waved as she was led away. Liam tucked the cookie into his pocket, a small warmth against. Old cold. He didn't notice Callista pause at the elevator. Didn't see her finger hover over the button for E7 before selecting E3 instead. A mother's instinct, maybe. Or luck. Down in Subble 2, the maintenance corridor smelled like motor oil and decades-old concrete. Liam found Finn Barrett crouched beside an access panel, swearing softly at a seized bolt. "Need a hand?" Liam asked. Finn looked up, frustrated. "This thing's been stuck since the Clinton administration." "The first one, Liam." Nell studied the bolt. Rust had fused it to the bracket. He pulled a small torch from his belt, heated the metal just enough to expand it, then applied a breaker bar at the perfect angle. The bolt surrendered with a sharp crack. Finn stared. "Where'd you learn that?" "Here and there," Liam said, standing. His tone made it clear the subject was closed. Finn wanted to press, but something in Liam's face stopped him. Instead, he said, "You ever think about doing more than janitorial? You've got the skills." Liam picked up his card. "I'm good where I am." He wasn't, but he was safe. 3 floors above them, Callista sat in her glass-walled conference room, reviewing presentation. Slides for the afternoon's product launch. Investors were flying in. Media had been invited. Everything needed to be perfect. Clinton Reeves entered without knocking. "Morning, Callista. Quick facilities. Update." She didn't look up. "Go ahead." "Elevator E7's been showing minor vibration alerts. Sensor drift probably. I've scheduled a full service for next week after your event. Didn't want maintenance crews disrupting your big day." Ingrid Park, seated at the far end of the table, straightened. "Clinton, we discussed this. Vibration alerts on high-speed elevators aren't minor. We should inspect before it's a calibration issue." Clinton cut in irritation bleeding through his smile. "We're not shutting down a primary lift over paranoia." Callista looked between them. Ingrid's jaw was tight. Clinton's confidence felt rehearsed. She made the calculation every CEO makes. Risk versus optics. "We'll address it next week," she said. "Ingrid, log your concerns." "Clinton, if anything changes, I want to." "No, immediately." Clinton nodded victorious. Ingrid said nothing, but her pen pressed hard enough to dent the paper. The seed was planted. The clock was ticking. Later that morning, Liam stood in the parking garage. Phone pressed to his ear. On the other end, his son Oliver, 8 years old, all nervous energy, was worried about his swimming test. "Dad, what if I sink?" Liam leaned against a concrete pillar. "You won't remember what we practiced." Big breath in. Hold it. Let yourself float. The hard part's just the first step, trusting the water. "But what if I'm scared?" "Then you're brave," Liam said softly. "Being scared and doing it anyway. That's what brave is." He didn't know it yet, but he'd just given himself the same advice. The afternoon arrived heavy with humidity. Storm clouds gathered west of the city, turning the sky the color of old bruises. Inside Sterling Tower, the product launch was in full swing. Journalists filled the 24th floor conference hall. Callista stood at the podium, red dress catching the stage lights, delivering her pitch with the kind of confidence that came from knowing every word by heart. 10 floors below, Sophie had just finished a STEM workshop for employees' children. She was excited, chattering to Vivian Hale, Callista's 29-year-old communications assistant, about robots and circuits. Vivian checked her watch. "Your mom's still presenting, but she wanted you home early. Let's head down." They walked to the elevator bay. E7's door stood open, waiting. Vivian stepped inside, pressed the button for the lobby. Sophie followed. The doors closed. The car began to descend. On the 5th floor in the building management system control room, a technician named Marcus noticed something on his screen. Elevator E7 sensor array, alpha, showing red vibration, threshold exceeded. He reached for the phone to call Clinton, hesitated. Clinton had been clear about not disrupting the event. Marcus made a note in the log and decided it could wait. Outside, lightning cracked the sky. The power surge hit like a fist. Lights flickered. Backup generators hummed to life. In the BMS room, half the monitors went black, then rebooted. Marcus' screen flashed a warning. E7. Emergency brake engaged. Position anomaly. Inside the elevator, Vivian felt the lurch. The car jerked, dropped 3 feet, caught itself with a metallic scream. Emergency lights snapped on, harsh and red. What's happening? Sophie's voice was small. It's okay, sweetie. Just a little. The doors rattled open at floor 9, stuck halfway. Vivian made a split-second decision. I'm getting out. Stay right there. I'll get help. She squeezed through the gap. The doors tried to close. Metal grinding against metal, then gave up halfway. Sophie stood alone in the red light as the car shuddered and began to drift upward. Logic systems failing. Searching for a safe floor, it stopped between 22 and 23. Crooked, silent, except for the hum of overtaxed motors. In the BMS room, Marcus was no longer hesitating. Alarm screamed. The screen showed E7 offline. Position uncertain. Cabin environmental sensors spiking. He grabbed the radio. All units, we have an elevator emergency. Sven stuck between floors. Occupant count 1. He checked the passenger manifest. His stomach dropped. Occupancy type. Child. The radio crackled to life across every security channel in the building. In the 24th floor conference hall, Henry Moore pressed a finger to his earpiece, listening to the frantic transmission. He caught Callista's eye. She saw his face and knew. She excused herself from the podium, forced calm even as her pulse hammered. In the hallway, Henry delivered the news and clipped sentences. E7 stuck. Sophie's inside. Callista's world. Telescope to a single point. Everything else, the investors, the journalists. The launch evaporated. Where? Between 22 and 23. Ma'am, we're calling the elevator company. They'll how long? Henry hesitated. 25? Maybe 30 minutes. Callista pushed past him, heading for the stairs. Her heels echoed like gunshots. In the lobby, Liam had just finished restocking paper towels in the men's room when he heard the commotion. Security was setting up barriers. Finn Barrett sprinted past, toolbox rattling. Liam followed. The crowd gathered at the elevator bay. Henry was coordinating, radio in hand. Clinton Reeves stood off to the side, face pale, muttering about protocols and liability. Ingrid Park had pulled up the BMS data on a tablet, her expression grim. We need to cut auxiliary power to E7, she said. The motor's overheating. If it seizes, the brake could slip. Absolutely not. Clinton snapped. We follow standard procedure. Wait for the certified technicians. In 30 minutes. That cabin could be filled with smoke. Ingrid shot back. The motor casing's already at 190 degrees. Liam stepped closer, eyes on the status board. He recognized the symbols from another life tension indicators, load distribution, brake, engagement percentages. E7 was hemorrhaging stability. Then he heard it, a sound that cut through the noise like a blade. Sophie's voice, muffled and distant, carried through the ventilation grate. Mom, it's hot. I can't. Callista arrived, breathless, her polished exterior cracking. She grabbed Henry's radio, tried to speak, but no words came. Just a mother's fear, raw and unconcealed. Liam watched her. He saw himself 5 years ago, watching helplessly as someone he cared about slipped away. He'd sworn never again. He removed his work gloves, tucked them into his tool belt. The belt itself was old canvas worn soft with a metal plate riveted to the buckle. Carter Sky Trace 09. The name of a project that ended badly. He spoke quietly, directed at no one in particular. I can climb up, lock the brake manually, vent the heat, get her out. The room went still. Clinton turned. Excuse me? I said I can climb the shaft, stabilize the car, extract the girl. You're a janitor, Clinton said, as if the word explained everything. I used to be an engineer. Liam's voice was flat. Suspension systems. Emergency response. I know what I'm doing. Ingrid looked at him differently now, pieces clicking. You're serious? Yes. Clinton's face flushed. This is a 50-story tower with complex mechanical systems. We have regulations, insurance, liability. You cannot just Callista cut him off. Can you get my daughter out? Liam met me her eyes. Yes. She didn't hesitate. Not anymore. Henry, open the maintenance access on floor 20. Finn, get him lights and a safety line. Ingrid, monitor the Load in real time. This is against every protocol. Clinton's voice pitched upward. If something goes wrong, then I'll take responsibility. Callista's tone could have cut steel. Do it now. Henry moved. Finn moved. Clinton stood frozen, realizing he'd just lost. Liam tightened his belt, checked his tools, took a breath that tasted like concrete dust and old fear. Callista's voice, almost a whisper. Bring her back. He nodded once, then turned toward the stairs. The first step is always the hardest. Trusting yourself. After you. Fail, Liam climbed. Floor 20 smelled like machine oil and stale air. The maintenance access door stood open, revealing the shaft of vertical tunnel of darkness. Cables thick as a man's forearm running parallel to guide rails. The heat radiating up was oppressive. Finn clipped a headlamp to Liam's forehead, handed him a coil of safety rope. This is insane. Probably. Liam tested the rope's anchor point. Gave it his full weight. It held. He stepped to the edge. Below blackness, above the underside of E7's cabin, 20 feet. Up, metal groaning softly. He could smell burning insulation. He reached for the first handhold. A maintenance ladder bolted to the shaft wall. Cold metal, solid. He pulled himself into the dark. Climbing felt like descending into memory. Every grip, every shift of weight brought him back to the hydraulic shaft 5 years ago. The screaming alarms, his team's faces, the choice he'd made to stay behind. His hands found the next rung, then the next. From the lobby, Ingrid's voice crackled through a radio clipped to his belt. Liam, you're passing 21 cabins directly above you. Motor temperature, now 205 degrees. He didn't waste breath answering. Just climbed. A bolt snapped. The sound was sharp. Final. Liam's left hand slipped, his body swinging out over nothing. For a heartbeat, he was weightless. Then training took over. He grabbed the cable, wrapped his legs around it, friction burning through his coveralls. He found the ladder again, kept moving. In the lobby, Callista watched the monitor. Sophie's heat signature, a small bloom of red. She pressed a hand to her mouth. Liam reached floor 22. The cabin's underside was 3 feet above him, a scarred metal belly leaking smoke through the seams. He pulled himself onto a narrow maintenance platform that ran beneath the car, barely wide enough for a man to crouch. The access hatch was designed for inspections, not rescues. He wedged a pry bar into the seal, levered it open. Heat rolled out, thick and chemical. Inside, Sophie sat against the wall, face flushed, breathing shallow. "Hey there," Liam said, keeping his voice steady. She looked up, eyes red. "That's right." He lowered himself through the hatch, feet finding the cabin floor. "We're going to get you out, but I need you to help." "Me okay?" She nodded, exhausted. He pulled a cloth from his pocket, wet it from his water bottle, and pressed it gently over her nose and mouth. "Breathe slow. In, out. Count to 5 with me. 1, 2. She counted, her voice a whisper. It steadied her. Steadied him. Above, through the hatch. Ingrid's voice. "Liam, the motorcycling. If it seizes, the main brake might not hold." He examined the brake assembly through the open hatch. The friction pads were worn. Metal shavings scattered around the drum. One hard jolt, and they'd fail. He reached into his tool belt, pulled out a steel bar, originally a mounting bracket he'd been meaning to reinstall somewhere. He wedged it into the brake. Gear teeth, forcing them to lock at a steeper angle, then added a screwdriver through a secondary hole as a backup pin. Not regulation. Not pretty. But physics didn't care about beauty. "Ingrid, tell them I've manually locked the brake. But it's temporary. If the cabin shakes too hard, it'll slip." "Understood. We're cutting auxiliary power in 30 seconds. It's going to drop the motor. Might cause a jolt." Liam pulled Sophie close. "Position. Them both in the corner where the cabin's frame was strongest. Hold on to me. Don't let go. I'm scared." "Me too." He wrapped his arms around her, braced his back against the wall. "That makes us brave." The countdown began. 20 seconds. 12 20s. Add a note. Jump to 15. In the lobby, Callista couldn't watch. Couldn't look away. 5 seconds. Ingrid threw the switch. The motor died. The cabin dropped. 6 and 8. Then the manual brake caught. Metal shrieking. The whole car shuddering like a dying animal. Liam's makeshift wedge held. Barely. Smoke poured from the brake housing. Sophie was crying now, but she held on. "You did perfect," Liam told her. "We're almost there." The next part was the hardest. The cabin was level with floor 22, but the outer door was locked, and the inner door was jammed. He needed to open both with a gap just wide enough to pass Sophie through. He found a manual release lever for the cabin door hidden behind a panel. Pulled it. The door slid, opened 2 inches, then stuck. He braced his shoulder against it, pushed until something gave. Zixes and 8 on the other side. Henry and Finn were prying at the outer door with crowbars. Inch by agonizing inch. It moved. Almost there, Finn shouted. The wedge in the brake slipped A/4 in. The cabin lurched. Liam didn't think. He grabbed Sophie, lifted her toward the gap. Henry's hands reached through, caught her wrists. Together, they pulled her through out into the light and safety of floor 22. Behind him, the screwdriver pin snapped. The cabin dropped another 3 inches. The gap collapsing to nothing. For a moment, Liam was alone in the dark, the car swaying on failing brakes, the shaft yawning below. Then Finn's voice. Liam grabbed the line. A safety rope dropped. Through the hatch above. Liam caught it, tied it around his chest, and pulled himself up through the hatch just as the brake gave out entirely. The cabin fell, cables screaming, until the emergency. Safeties caught it 5 floors down with a sound like a train wreck. Liam hung in the shaft, rope digging into his ribs, breathing hard. Below, the wreckage of E7 smoldered. Above, hands reached down, pulled him onto floor 22. He collapsed on solid ground, every muscle shaking. Sophie was wrapped in a thermal blanket, crying into Callista's shoulder. Paramedics were checking her vitals. She was going to be fine. Callista looked over at Liam. Their eyes met. She opened her mouth, trying to find words adequate for what had just happened, and found none. Just tears. She didn't bother hiding. Liam sat against the wall, blood seeping through his coveralls from a dozen small cuts. Finn offered him water. He drank slowly, hands still trembling. The elevator company's technicians arrived 10 minutes later. By then, it was over. Clinton Reeves appeared at the edge of the crowd, face ashen. This was unauthorized, completely against procedure. Ingrid stepped between them, tablet in hand. "You want to talk about procedure? Here's the maintenance log. 3 separate warnings about E7's vibration sensors. All dismissed by you. Dated. Time-stamped. Signed." Clinton's mouth worked soundlessly. Henry Moore, for once, did the right thing. "Enough, Clinton. You're done here." The next 48 hours passed in a blur of inspections, reports, and media vans circling the building like sharks. Sterling Innovations' PR team scrambled to control the narrative. Vivian Hale drafted statements emphasizing the heroism, downplaying the negligence. But Callista overruled her. "We tell the truth," she said. "All of it." The emergency board meeting convened at dawn. Callista entered the conference room dressed in charcoal gray. No armor today, just exhaustion and resolve. Clinton sat at the far end, flanked by a lawyer. Ingrid presented first. Her report was clinical, devastating. E7 had been deteriorating for months. Maintenance had been deferred repeatedly, always for the same reason. Optics. Clinton had prioritized image over safety, and it had nearly killed a child. Clinton tried to deflect. "I followed standard risk assessment. Protocols. The probability was there's a 7-year-old girl who doesn't care about your probabilities," Ingrid said. Henry spoke next, admitting his own failures, prioritizing reputation over action, delaying decisions when seconds mattered. Then Callista addressed the room. "I approve the delay. I chose the product launch over safety inspection. That decision nearly cost me my daughter. It could have cost someone else theirs. Clinton will be terminated effective immediately, pending investigation. Henry will be suspended with review. Ingrid will oversee a full audit of every system in this building." One of the board members leaned forward. "And the janitor who performed the rescue. His name is Liam Carter," Callista said. "And we owe him more than gratitude." She pulled out a document, slid it across the table. "I'm proposing what we'll call the Carter Protocol, a new standard operating procedure. When life safety is at risk, Technical personnel with demonstrated competence have authority to act immediately regardless of rank or clearance. No bureaucratic delays, no liability shields, lives first, always. The room was silent. All in favor? The vote was unanimous. Liam spent that night at home, sitting on the edge of his couch, staring at his hands. Oliver was asleep down the hall. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. His phone buzzed. A text from Callista. Community pool tomorrow. Sophie wants to thank you properly. He almost declined, almost retreated back into the safety of invisibility. Then Oliver shuffled out of his room, rubbing his eyes. Dad, did you really climb into an elevator shaft? News traveled fast in elementary schools. Yeah. Were you scared? Liam thought about it. Terrified. Oliver sat next to him. But you did it anyway. Had to. Someone needed help. That's what you told me about swimming. Being brave is being scared and doing it anyway. Liam looked at his son, 8 years old, already wiser than he deserved, and something cracked open in his chest. He pulled Oliver close. Yeah, buddy, that's exactly what it is. The community pool smelled like chlorine in summer, even though autumn was creeping in. Liam arrived at 2. Oliver in tow swim, trunks and towels in a duffel bag. Callista and Sophie were already there, sitting on the edge of the shallow end. Sophie's face lit up when she saw him. She ran over, threw her arms around his waist. Mr. Liam. He knelt down, smiled. How you feeling, kiddo? Good. Mom says you saved my life. We help each other, he said. You were brave in there. Callista approached, dressed casually for the first time he'd seen jeans. A simple blouse, hair down. She looked younger, less like a fortress. Thank you for coming, she said. Wouldn't miss it. The kids played in the water while the adults sat on a bench nearby. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Callista said, ING told me about your background, aerospace engineering, Skytrace project. Liam's jaw tightened. That was a long time ago, the hydraulic failure. You stayed behind. He didn't answer. Sophie asked about this. Callista gestured to a scar on his forearm, barely visible beneath the tan. She wanted to know if it hurt. Not anymore. You told her you got it holding a rope so someone else could climb first. Liam watched Oliver practicing his swimming arms slicing through the water with new confidence. That's the truth. You said the hardest part is always the first step, trusting yourself after you've fallen before. He turned to her. Your daughter's a good listener. She gets it from me. Callista paused. Liam, I want to offer you a position, Director of Maintenance Safety. You'd redesign our protocols, train the teams, have full authority to shut down anything that's not right. Ingrid would work with you. No interference, no Clinton Reeves types. He looked at her surprised. I need someone who understands that systems fail, she continued. Someone who knows what it costs when we ignore the warning signs. Someone who won't let rank or protocol stop them from doing what's right. Liam shook his head slowly. I don't know if I can go back to that world. I left for a reason. You never left it, she said gently. You just stopped trusting yourself. But you climbed that shaft. You held that brake. You didn't fall last. You made sure no one else did. He was quiet for a long time. In the pool, Oliver called out, Dad, watch this. And dove under, popping up 5 feet away, grinning. He's doing great, Callista observed. I told him the first step's the hardest. After that, you just keep swimming. She smiled. Take your time thinking about the offer, but for what it's worth, I think you've already taken the first step. 1 week later, Sterling Towers lobby held a small ceremony. No press, no cameras, just the building staff gathered in front of a brushed steel plaque mounted near the elevators. The plaque read, the Carter Toll. In emergencies where life safety is at immediate risk, qualified personnel are empowered to act without delay. Authority derives not from title, but from competence and courage in all decisions. Lives before protocols. People before optics. Callista stood at a podium addressing the crowd. This building failed Sophie. It failed all of you who've worked here, trusting that safety came first. We're changing that today, not with words, but with accountability. She gestured to Liam, standing off to the side, uncomfortable with attention. Liam Carter reminded us that heroism isn't about rank. It's about showing up when it's hard, staying when it's dangerous, and choosing to fall last so others can stand first. Scattered applause. Sophie ran up, hugged his leg. Oliver gave him a thumbs up from the crowd. Ingrid approached afterward. So, you taking the job? Liam looked around the lobby, the elevators, the systems, the people who moved through this space every day, trusting it wouldn't fail them. He thought about the weight of that trust, the cost of ignoring it. Yeah, he said finally. I'll take it. She grinned. Good. We start Monday. Full systems audit. It's going to be hell. Wouldn't have it any other way. That evening as the sun set and painted the tower's glass facade gold, Callista found Liam in the maintenance bay on Subble 2. He was examining the replacement elevator, Estevan's permanent successor, running his hands over the brake assembly, checking clearances. Thought I'd find you here, she said. He straightened. Old habits. Good habits. She leaned against the doorframe. Can I ask you something that day in the shaft? Were you thinking about your team? The ones you lost? He was silent for a moment. Yeah, I was thinking I couldn't let it happen again. Couldn't be the guy who hesitated. You weren't, she said. You were the guy who climbed. He met her eyes. Something passed between them. Not romance, not yet, but the beginning of understanding. Two people who'd learned the same hard lesson. That fear and courage aren't opposites. They're partners. Thank you, she said quietly, for not waiting, for trusting yourself when no one else did. You did, he pointed out. You gave the order because you took the first step. They stood there in the fluorescent light, surrounded by motors and cable spools and the mundane machinery that held people's lives in balance every day. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't simple, but it was real, and real was enough. 3 months later, Sterling Tower hummed with new rhythms. The Carter Protocol had been adopted by 6 other buildings in Chicago. Liam's training program was producing maintenance crews who understood that vigilance and competence mattered more than seniority. On a Friday afternoon, Liam stood in the central elevator shaft, newly renovated safety systems upgraded, supervising a practice drill. Finn was below, Ingrid monitoring from the control room. They were testing the emergency brake lockout system Liam had designed, the one that would have prevented E7's failure. The drill went perfectly. Systems responded in 3.2 seconds. Backup engaged automatically. Clean run, Ingrid said over the radio. Carter Protocol in action. Liam allowed himself a small smile. That evening, he met Callista and the kids at a diner near the building. Nothing fancy, just burgers and fries. Sophie and Oliver were debating who was faster in the pool. Callista and Liam sat across from each other, coffee cooling. Between them, Ingrid says you're a tyrant about inspections. Callista said, eyes twinkling. I prefer thorough. The building's never been safer. He shrugged. It's a start. Sophie looked up from her fries. Are you and my mom friends now? Callista laughed. A sound that was becoming more frequent. What do you think, Mr. Liam? Are we friends? He considered. Friends seemed too small a word for two people who'd stared down the worst together and come out the other side changed. But it was a beginning. Yeah, he said. I think we are. Oliver leaned over to Sophie. My dad's a hero. Sophie nodded. Seriously. Mine too. But different. Liam and Callista exchanged a glance. No words needed. Outside, the city moved on. Elevators rose and fell. Cables held. Brakes worked. People trusted systems. Built by people who'd learned the hardest way possible that trust must be earned every single day. And in a tower made of glass and steel and second chances, a janitor who'd become an engineer reminded everyone who'd listen. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to climb anyway, to hold the line, to fall last. If falling means someone else gets to rise first, that's the first step. Everything after is just keeping your promise. Dad's a hero. Sophie nodded. Seriously. Mine too. But different. Liam and Callista exchanged a glance. No words needed. Outside, the city moved on. Elevators rose and fell. Cables held. Brakes worked. People trusted systems. Built by people who'd learned the hardest way possible that trust must be earned every single day. And in a tower made of glass and steel and second chances, a janitor who'd become an engineer reminded everyone who'd listen. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the choice to climb anyway, to hold the line, to fall last. If falling means someone else gets to rise first, that's the first step. Everything after is just keeping your promise.